Imagine walking into a car dealership on a normal weekday. You are prepared, you have savings, your credit score is solid, you have done everything right, and yet the lot is nearly empty. One aging sedan sits alone under the sun, carrying a price tag higher than what you paid for your first year of college. Not because it is rare, not because it is advanced, but because the system that once delivered abundance has quietly broken down. Somewhere in Southeast Asia, a factory shut down for a few hours. Somewhere in the Middle East, a ship stopped moving. Somewhere in a government office, two leaders decided cooperation was no longer worth it, and suddenly, a car no longer exists when you want to buy it. This is not a coincidence. This is the world we are entering. For nearly 30 years, humanity lived inside a powerful illusion. We were told that borders no longer mattered, that the world had flattened, that trade and technology had permanently replaced conflict. A phone could be designed in one country, assembled in another, and sold across the planet without friction. We called this system globalization. It gave us cheap clothing, affordable electronics, and the comfort of endless choice. It trained us to expect products instantly and at low prices. But beneath that convenience was a fragile assumption that peace, cooperation, and trust would never seriously break down. That assumption no longer holds. Today, we are entering an era that looks very different from the last 3 decades, an era where trade blocks replace open markets, where security outweighs efficiency, where inflation is not a temporary shock but a long-term condition. This story is not just about rising prices. It is about how the architecture of the global economy itself is being dismantled and rebuilt. From the fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989 until the mid-2010s, the world experienced what economists later called the golden age of globalization. There was a widespread belief that liberal democracy and free market capitalism had permanently won. That large-scale war between major powers was irrational. After all, why destroy a country that produces your goods? This mindset produced theories suggesting deeply connected economies would never fight each other, that history itself had reached a stable endpoint. Reality proved otherwise. The world did not become safer, it became more interconnected. And that interconnection created new forms of vulnerability. For decades, corporations worshipped efficiency. Inventory was considered waste. Any part sitting in a warehouse was money doing nothing. The goal was perfect timing. Receive components only when they were needed, not a moment earlier. This philosophy transformed global manufacturing. Costs dropped, profits rose, supply chains stretched across continents, but efficiency came at a hidden price. Just-in-time systems had no buffers, no redundancy, no margin for error. They worked beautifully until the moment something went wrong. When disruptions hit, factories stopped. Finished products sat incomplete. Entire industries froze because one small component failed to arrive. The lesson was brutal but clear. Efficiency without resilience is fragile. Today, companies are reversing course. Warehouses are being rebuilt. Inventory is being stockpiled. Factories are moving closer to home or into politically friendly regions. This shift increases costs at every stage, and consumers ultimately absorb those costs. For decades, global trade was sold as a force for peace. The idea was simple: countries that trade together do not fight each other. What this narrative ignored was power. Global supply chains are not evenly distributed. They depend on critical choke points, specific technologies, machines, and resources controlled by a small number of players. Once governments recognized this, trade stopped being neutral. Instead of tariffs, access restrictions appeared. Instead of sanctions on finished goods, technology itself became the target. Entire industries could be slowed or crippled without firing a single missile. Trust collapsed. When dependence becomes leverage, cooperation turns into risk. Energy soon followed the same path. For years, cheap and reliable energy powered industrial growth. Entire economic models were built on the assumption that supply would remain abundant and affordable. When those flows were disrupted, the consequences were immediate. Energy now travels longer distances through more steps at far higher cost. Industries that once thrived became uncompetitive overnight. Factories closed or relocated. Energy returned to its historical role as a geopolitical weapon. Geography mattered again. As trust in global markets declined, governments stepped in. For decades, industrial policy had been dismissed as outdated. Markets were supposed to decide winners and losers. Governments were expected to stay out of production. That philosophy collapsed. States began paying companies to build locally. Massive subsidies flowed into strategic industries like chips, batteries, and energy. This triggered a global subsidy race. Instead of one efficient supply chain, multiple countries began building duplicate capacity. The same products were produced in multiple locations at higher cost. Taxpayers paid once through subsidies. Consumers paid again through higher prices. Security replaced efficiency as the primary goal. When financial systems were used as tools of pressure, many countries took notice. The freezing of reserves sent a clear message. Economic integration came with political strings attached. In response, nations began diversifying. Trade routes shifted, currency use changed, gold purchases surged. The world did not abandon the old system overnight, but it began building alternatives. Instead of one global financial order, multiple regional systems started forming. At the same time, globalization's labor engine began to stall. For decades, an enormous supply of cheap labor kept prices low. That supply is shrinking. Populations are aging, birth rates are falling. Labor shortages are growing, wages are rising. There is no next massive workforce waiting to replace the old one. Automation will fill part of the gap, but automation is expensive. Those costs flow directly into prices. Labor scarcity makes inflation structural, not temporary. Environmental policy then added another layer. Carbon rules now function as trade barriers. Market access increasingly depends on regulatory compliance rather than cost efficiency. Supply chains reorganize not for price, but for survival. Even the digital world is fragmenting. The idea of one global internet is fading. Data borders, national regulations, and platform restrictions are replacing open access. Companies build different versions of the same product for different regions. Innovation slows, costs rise. Physical borders are returning online. When all of these forces come together, the outcome is clear. Globalization once pushed prices down by maximizing efficiency. Deglobalization pushes them up by prioritizing security. Redundancy costs money. Local production costs money. Higher wages cost money. Central banks cannot fix this. Interest rates cannot rebuild supply chains or create workers. We are entering an era where higher prices are normal. Global trade is not disappearing. Goods will still cross borders. But the era of frictionless, borderless efficiency is over. The world is reorganizing into blocks. Cooperation continues, but trust is limited. Competition is sharper. Conflict is closer. This is a more dangerous world, but also one full of opportunity. Resilience is replacing speed. Stability is replacing cheapness. Long-term survival is replacing short-term profit. History did not end, it paused. And now it is moving again. If you stayed to the end, you are someone who wants to understand how the system works, not just live inside it. If this helped explain why life feels more expensive and uncertain, support the channel. Like the video, subscribe for deeper analysis, and comment below how are you adapting to this new global reality. Thanks for watching. Stay informed, stay skeptical. I'll see you next time.